All right. Hey, everybody. How's it going? We got a great viewership today. We got 26 on YouTube. I can never see how many people are LinkedIn, but I see that we've got some people chatting on LinkedIn, especially from Detroit and Illinois. It's got to be much colder up there, I imagine, in Detroit and Illinois. It's only 25 degrees right now in Kansas City, so it's pretty dang chilly here.
Oh man, it's
Snowy
55
in
and rising here in the
Massachusetts.
Carolinas.
Really? It was like 58 yesterday. Then we had a front come through. That might be why I'm feeling so bad. Like I was telling Andy before we started, it's perfect timing that the day that my winter break starts and the day that my kids get off school for winter break is the day that like I started getting a scratchy throat at like 3 o'clock in the morning. And now I'm super achy. I'm like feeling faint, and all that. So I'm going to try to keep the energy up. I took some Dayquil, but I may have to take like a COVID test or something here at some point because I'm feeling like crap. But
Well,
um,
hopefully by the end of this session, you will be feeling excellent.
mhm, I will be super energized by spreadsheets. So, uh, yeah, without too much of an intro, Andy's kind of pulling me along here to uh, to share that this is going to be a fun episode because it's something that I think, to speak for Andy a little bit, both of us kind of suck at, which is Excel. I am a self-proclaimed Excel noob. I make spreadsheets for like myself for like little things, but at the point that I want to do like a pivot table or something like that, I'm going over to YouTube and I'm watching a video like every time because I can't remember like all the nuances of it, and I don't live in Excel. I live, primarily in PowerPoint all day. So I think this is going to be a fun one because it's going to expose. We're going to be vulnerable with our
Yeah.
audience today.
So, with that in mind, we really are looking forward to some crowd participation in this one.
Hmm.
Questions, comments, suggestions. We really want to get like your feedback. As Mark Cashman says, we like to demo without a safety net. We are not afraid to fail spectacularly in
Yeah.
front of a live audience. If you want to see us try something, let us know. Whether you're on YouTube or on LinkedIn, we're happy to try it out. We've got a bunch of demos kind of lined up. We got a lot of things that we want to walk through.
Hmm.
We're going to provide a few links along the way, but we really want you to participate. Hopefully, you get something out of this. I know I've got some colleagues from work joining in. I'm glad you all are
Awesome.
here. Looking forward for your feedback internally as well. We'll do some internal training on this in the near future. But we wanted to do this one live without the safety net,
Hmm.
and take in that feedback. And we like to learn out loud. So this one's going to be a lot of
Yeah,
fun.
and Excel is one of those things that we haven't talked about a lot, and demoed a lot because and you might be thinking like, well, why now? Copilot for Excel has been technically in preview until I think it was about September of this year. So it's only been out of preview for like a couple of months, and we just got access to, outside of like the insider rings for Excel, we just got access to that advanced analysis with Python. So we've had this like on the list to get to, but we wanted to wait until we could show the Python stuff out and kind of flesh out like all of the features. I feel like probably we've kind of hit a level of Copilot in Excel maturity that now we can kind of look at it and see like a little bit more than just like the very very basic stuff that they showed like a year and a half ago, because there's new stuff. We want to kind of scratch the surface of that new stuff and check it out. So today we're going to look at formulas and getting help with formulas and how to like ask questions and generate a formula. We're going to look at visualizing data, so different options that we have for creating like visualizations and kind of working with raw numbers and making them kind of make sense, really. We're going to talk about working with texts, because one of the wave 2 announcements was that now Copilot in Excel can like reason over text. So you can now use it for like, trying to get insights on survey results and stuff like that. Then we're going to get into, some of the more heavy stuff like um, conditional formatting and working with like highlighting values and removing things that are duplicate. Some of that stuff that like takes a lot of clicks in Excel to do it manually. We're going to see how Copilot kind of speed up and help with that. Then we're going to get into Python, and we've got a couple of ideas of things that are more than just like the basic Python demo that we've all kind of seen at like Ignite. We're going to put a twist on it and kind of like do some ideation with our fake coffee shop. So the scenario is we've got this fake coffee shop called Jolly Roger Java. That's what we kind of do. It's like a small medium business type of a use case, and we're gonna get into some like planning and store layouts and stuff like that with Excel. So without further ado, I guess we'll jump right in, Andy, and start with kind of the very basic of Excel is where do you get to Copilot? How do you see it? And do you have like some tips and tricks for like making it show up and work properly? Do you want to share your screen or do you want me to jump in?
I mean, mine's up and running.
Cool. Yeah, and I just remembered a second ago to open up my Windows computer so we can show the Windows version of Excel. So you've got Excel open here. This is in the web browser, right?
Yep, Excel in the web.
So the first question I always get is, where do I see this at? Like, how do I get to Copilot in Excel? Because maybe they've only used like Copilot chat or something like that.
Right. So there's actually a couple of entry points into it, but probably the most obvious is going to be in the upper right-hand corner, the Copilot icon that's going to show up from the Home tab in the command bar up at the top. Go ahead and click that. It's going to open up it's a version of Biz Chat that is actually built in to Copilot, but it's or here in Excel, but it's scoped to Excel. So you're not going to have the full Biz Chat capabilities that you might have if you were to go to Biz Chat in Teams or Biz Chat from Microsoft 365 Home. It does scope it down a little bit to Copilot here inside of Excel. Now, we're doing this in the web. It would be very similar if you were doing this in the desktop. We'll demo from the desktop in just a little bit. But I'm starting from the web because I kind of recommend that for most Copilot experiences, start from the web, because I feel like there's more Copilot experiences in the web versions than in the desktop. Excel might be the one where it's an exception, but just based off of like previous recommendations for people that I work with and the teammates that I engage with, I recommend starting from the web and then going from there.
So in the web, I genuinely don't know. Are you able to resize that sidebar that you've got, like the side chat?
Yeah. So I am not able to.
Okay, because I just noticed that in Windows. So like Andy, I've got this open up another spreadsheet, but I'm doing the Windows desktop app, and it's in the same place, right? It's like right there in the top corner. You can open up that sidebar chat. One benefit of having it inside of your desktop apps, other than like the advanced analysis, is that if you mouse over the middle right here, you can actually make that wider. So you can kind of deal with it a little bit more split screen. So that might be one reason why you want to do it. I can't see that like you can pop it out or anything, but it's pretty handy to be able to like make it wider if you're dealing with text and things like that.
Yeah. And I do like the split screen portion of that. Can we go back to my screen though for just a minute? Got another couple of things I want to bring up. All right. So another thing to consider when you're working with it is we're looking right now at Copilot in Excel, but there's also Copilot in Microsoft Edge, depending on the organization that you work with. You can open up Copilot in Edge in the sidebar, and then that gives you basically the full Biz Chat experience. We're going to talk about a couple of scenarios where you might want to work with just Copilot in Excel versus when you might want to use Biz Chat to do things that are Copilot-y to the file that you're working on. Sometimes you're going to get some different results because remember, the one that's actually built in is scoped to Edge, and so it's going to have some limited capabilities versus if you try to work with Biz Chat off to the side. So I'm showing this one on the far right. That's actually coming from my web browser, and that's Edge that's actually plugged in. If you don't have this one in your Edge web browser, maybe company policy actually turns that off. Another thing that you could potentially do, I'm a big fan of the Edge web browser. I think Microsoft's done a pretty good job on that. But if I go to like Microsoft 365 Home, actually, let me do this from like we do it like this. So like just open this in
And
a
that
new tab.
icon's
So if I go
changing
to
in
like Microsoft
January, by the way.
365 Home,
They said
what's
that
that?
icon that he just showed is changing, by the way. We just got that in the
Oh yeah.
message center this last week. All right, so
All
doing
right.
dual factor, nice and secure. There we
Yep.
go.
So I'm Microsoft 365 Home. I can pull up Biz Chat
Mhm.
here. All right, so now I've got my Biz Chat experience. And then going back to the workbook, one of the things that Edge supports that's really helpful is that I can actually go split screen. So I can use the split screen feature built into Edge. I can select Biz Chat, and now I've got Biz Chat open on one side, and then I've got Edge and Copilot open on the other side.
Mhm.
And again, there's going to be different capabilities for the Copilot in Excel versus the Copilot that you might find in your web browser. So I like to kind of go back and forth with them, and if you need to, you can resize here. Now this window looks a little
Yeah, you
busy
could kinda collapse
right
that
now.
history. Yeah.
Yep, you can collapse the history, go back into that view, and then it's going to be a little bit more
Mhm.
streamlined. The resolution that my browser currently is not the resolution that I typically use when I'm working. I have to make the resolution better for streaming here on YouTube and inside of specifically inside of LinkedIn. So I have to like up my
Mhm.
resolution, or actually I have to lower my resolution because this is a very high resolution monitor. So I normally don't work with it like this. It's
Mhm.
not as busy as it looks like here. But the point is, using the split screen, I can take advantage of Biz Chat and its full Copilot virtual assistant capabilities, and then I can still do things over here. Now, this is not going to apply directly into the workbook. The things that I do here, I'm going to have to manually bring
Mhm.
over, but I can reference the workbook and what I'm working on, and I can do some powerful things. So we'll talk about some scenarios as we're moving through when you might want to use Copilot in Excel versus like when you might want to Copilot against Excel. And there is definitely a use case, I think, for both of
Mhm.
those.
So to hit back on that, like, web versus desktop, there's a really good comment here from LinkedIn. It's like, pretty much when Microsoft announces something, you're gonna see it in the web before you see it in the desktop apps. You gotta wait for, like, updates to hit your desktop applications. That's one with Python specifically, right? It was hitting the insider builds, had to kinda wait for it to hit general availability. The only exception for that is that Python, because it's gonna require the heavy lifting of a desktop app. But pretty much, yeah, like, especially when it comes to things like Outlook features and stuff like that, you're gonna see it in the web version before you see it in the desktop version. So that covers, like, the different ways that you can get to it. Most people are probably gonna get to Copilot in Excel using the sidebar chat, that kind of click it in the ribbon, open it up alongside. There's two other things that we wanna cover as well that are kind of getting started. The first is a hard requirement. Obviously, your Copilot is not going to help you, and it might even be grayed out if the file is not stored in OneDrive or SharePoint. So, if you're just, like, got a file that's on, like, your C drive on your computer and you open up Excel, you're gonna notice that the Copilot icon is actually, like, dithered out, and that's because you need to have it inside of, like, some type of M365 container. And the way that you can tell that is, one, he's looking at it on the web browser, but also if I go over to my desktop, if you see autosave up here, that means it's automatically saving, to the cloud. And that's why that's lit up for me, is because I have a Copilot license in my M365 account. So that's a hard requirement. The other thing that it used to be a hard requirement, but Microsoft said in Wave 2 that like they've softened that, is that it used to be we had to have the data in a table. So you've got spreadsheets, and that's just kind of like unstructured data. But what you used to have to do is like select your columns and your rows, and then you'd go insert, and then you would insert a table right there, and then Copilot would be able to work with it. Today, from what we've heard, you don't have to do that anymore, but it does kind of help Copilot still if you will structure that data, because you're basically putting like constraints on where am I looking at, and you're letting Copilot kind of like hone in on where the data is. If you format it like as a table, you also get headers and stuff like that. But that's pretty much the only like requirements or best practices I've heard. Other than that, it's pretty open-ended right now with Excel Copilot. So,
Yeah, I would
Andy,
agree.
you want to jump into our first category about like writing formulas and things like that?
Yeah, so before like we even uh, really dive into
Hmm.
that, with just Copilot open, I want to point out that along the sidebar here, they do have a couple of suggestions for you to get
Mm,
started. You see there's a couple here, and then there's some auto suggestions kind of in the lower right hand corner, and that's a great place to get started. So like, let's say that we're going to start looking at formulas. It's actually telling me right here to show a suggestion for a formula column. So you can go ahead and enter that in, and it's going to look at the table, look at the data inside of your workbook, and then it's going to start making some suggestions based off of its insights into your
mhm,
data. And keep in mind, Copilot can find insights that you might not necessarily see inside of the data, because it has that 10,000-foot view, all the rows, all the columns, all the values that are there, and it can take all of that information
mhm,
in, but also cross-reference all the different columns that are inside of there, and it can really show you some interesting things. So in my case, just by running that initial prompt, show a suggestion for a formula column, it's actually given me a couple of options to
mhm,
look at. And from there, what's really cool, and this is, I think, something that they started doing when Copilot went like officially general availability just a few
mhm,
months ago, it starts to break down the explanation. So in this case, it's going to say, well, let's calculate out the total reorder cost. So this workbook, I have fields for things like this is the quantity in stock, this is the unit price for one of these things, this is like the inventory value based off of that. Here's what a reorder level would look like. Here's what the quantity in the reorder would actually look like. And so what it can actually do is calculate out the total reorder cost, and it's going to go and look at those columns, quantity and reorder, and the unit
mhm,
price. Now, there's a couple of different ways I can interact with that, but before I even do that, it gives me an explanation. I can expand the explanation where it explains the formula to me in simple terms, and then it gives you a potential output of what it might look like. Now, from that point, you have the option to actually go in and copy and paste that formula yourself, create like a new column in the workbook, and then copy and paste it in. Or a new feature scrolling down is that you have the ability to insert a column. So you can ask it to go ahead and insert a column for you. And we're actually going to go ahead and do that. So like I'm in J, so let's go ahead and have it insert that column. So it's going to calculate out the reorder
mhm.
cost. Now I can tell there's an issue there. There's something that it doesn't like with the formula. So I could ask it to go back and troubleshoot that particular formula. So we'll say like troubleshoot this formula. What's wrong with
Mhm,
it? Why is it broken? And I'm going to use, in this case, Copilot to try to figure out what's wrong with it. It says that it's correct, but we can tell that it's not. So I might need to actually
interesting.
go and tweak that a couple of
Yeah.
times. So it's saying quantity in the reorder. So it's going to say, in this case, quantity in reorder, it would be 50, and I can probably tell what's breaking it as we look through here. This one has gallons, this one has
Mhm.
pounds, this one has liters, but then I get here and it's a numerical
Yeah.
value, and the ones with the numerical value are actually correct. So in this case, it's not the formula that was actually broken, it was the way that my workbook was actually formatted. So I just wanted to ask Copilot to troubleshoot the formula with you, to explain it, to validate that maybe it is or isn't right,
Mhm.
and then you can go back and you can review your data and figure out what's going on there.
Yeah, and one of the things that you can do, like, so he had to kind of look at the formula error message to say, "Oh, well, it's not a number. That's why it didn't work." But what he could do with Copilot is like, well, how do I split that apart, right? 50 pounds and all that. You could do it two different ways. You could ask Copilot, like, hey, make everything in column J, or make the quantity, make it a number, and you'll like format the data type as a number, and it would drop like the pounds and the gallons. Or you could ask Copilot like, hey, I want you to split the quantity in reorder, split it on a space, and then it would just like split it into 2 columns, and then his values, all of his formulas would have worked as well. So like there's kind of 2 ways to skin a cat when it comes to that. And what's nice is you can do that with Copilot now instead of having to like go highlight the data and dig around in the ribbon and ask for that. So I might try those 2 things actually here. I'm going to steal the screen, and I've got like, well, this is wrong because it's like 50 pounds, 50 gallons. So I'm going to say like, please split the J column by space and make the new column units for the header, right? Because I think that's what it would be. How many units is it? Just see if it does it here for me. So I got 46 rows in this this spreadsheet. I can't help with this. So it didn't do that, but it gave me the formula to do it. Like, hey, if you want to do that, then you could insert a new column. You could call it that. And then in K2, you could trim right and substitute. So I could just go ahead and do that. Like, let's do, I think I'd have to right click on this one and hit insert. There we go. And then make it like unit. And then this is the trim right command. So let's put that, there we go. So yeah, it just did it now. It like trimmed it off of there. And then what you'd want to do is in J2, you'd go here and you would, it's a circular reference. So that didn't quite do what I wanted it to, but it did split out the pounds by like trimming it off of there. It's like, that's one way of solving it. The other way, if I delete this row here or delete this column, there we go, get that back, would be like, okay, let's solve this by saying make column J a whole number data type, right? See if it just like drops the pounds and gallons and stuff, just making it like 50. Here are 2 changes I'm going to do. Do I want, and it kind of warns me, like, do I want to apply that? Let's click on that. It's also going to auto fit the columns, I guess, or something. Done. I made the changes. So, I think it only did it for like the one because I had it selected. But, so that is that. The other thing that I noticed a little bit ago, Andy, was that you can also like, let's delete this column that didn't work right here. Let's look at, you can actually right click and invoke Copilot, I noticed. So you were doing like, over here, like show a formula column for me, and you were kind of using the suggested prompts. If I close out of it, I can also right click on any cell or any column, and I get this Copilot right here in the middle. And it's got some of those same things. Like, do I want to use Python? Teach me something about Excel. Like, give me a random fact. But I could also do this, like suggest some kind of format or formula column. And then it does essentially that same thing. But I didn't have to like go through Copilot to do it. So I could right click and it'll have different suggested commands based on what type of thing it came in. So this is going to do the same thing where it's like total reorder cost. I could insert that column. And actually, if I undo that, let's undo it here. I noticed that, it's too late. I noticed where it said like insert right here. If you mouse over it, it actually puts the data in there temporarily. So you can see what it looks like before you hit the insert button. Like, let me try that again. I'm going to run this command. And so it's, hey, here's a thing that you can do to like do a reorder. But if I want to see what it looks like first, I hover over the insert column and check that out. It put it kind of grayed out along there. So I could see temporarily, do I want that column or not? And this is one that's like, hey, if it's in stock, then we're good. But otherwise, like give me a filter basically to tell me what to reorder or not. So I could do like yes, no versus that. And then I could also get into like, give me some conditional formatting, like highlight everything I need to reorder, stuff like that. And we'll get into that here in a little while.
There's a couple other formula things that I just want to mention while we're here in this particular section that I find that are really helpful. Can we switch back over to my screen?
There you go.
All right. So we're doing this against like our actual workbook, but we probably want to like test some of this before we actually put it into practice. So one of the things that I really like doing that helps with that is to take something like I'll just do a copy of like maybe the header at the top, the first row, and then like the first row of data underneath that. And then I like using Copilot Biz Chat to kind of brainstorm, come up with ideas, but also to ask like very specific questions. Now, I'm not going to use the work toggle for this because I don't want it to go to my workbook. I kind of want to separate this. So I'm going to go over to the web toggle in Biz Chat. And then I'm going to tell Copilot, I have a table with the following, and I'll paste that in, and it's going to pick up on what that actually is. Now, from there, I'm going to say, can you create an additional 20 rows of data? And I'm going to have it go and look at what I had. I'm going to wait for just a moment. All right, so now it's created a table with some fictitious data that I can work with, which is really helpful because now I got some sample data. I don't have to worry about my production data as I'm kind of going back and forth with Copilot, kind of figuring out some of the ins and outs. And so now that I've got like the sample data, I can say, well, can you add more categories, or I need a summary of this, or how to analyze the table. It's given me some prompts. But what I like using this for is, can you suggest a formula to calculate so like I'm looking at this, so like I see the quantity in stock, the unit, and the unit price to calculate out the total inventory value. So I've given it the sample. Now we're just kind of looking at the sample. So it's going to give me a detailed explanation of this. So to calculate out the total inventory value, you could look at the quantity in stock times the unit price. It's going to give you what it thinks is the formula for that. Are there additional formulas you can suggest?
Daniel says you need to be polite with Copilot.
Please.
Please, thank you.
You are correct, sir. You are correct. So in this case, I asked it, are there additional formulas that you can suggest? And so it's well, you could use the sum function. You can use the average. There's a min or a max or a count. And now that you're getting it thinking about Excel, if you go back, you're scoping it down to a conversation around Excel. So if you have a specific example or something that you want some clarification on, you can ask it, can you explain what this actually means? And now you're using it in a tutor-like scenario. Now you're getting Copilot to teach you about the thing that you're working on. And it's the smartest tutor because it knows all the ins and outs. It knows all the formulas, and it knows how to apply that in context with the conversation that you're having. Notice if we're looking at this, it says, okay, here's the description of what it is. This is the syntax that it uses. And then it's giving me an example, but look at the example. It's referencing something in my workbook. So now it's given me a reference inside of the conversation that is something that I know, and it's tying it to a purpose that I'm actually working on.
So one good question,
now, there's a question
is like, why would you do this here instead of the other? It seems like you're kind of like war gaming right over here. Like you're not messing up your spreadsheet, like someone would think messing up, or like maybe I would do this if it was like a shared spreadsheet and I like had like a bunch of people in there and I didn't want to like change it out from under them. That'd be one reason I could see. I don't know if you've got other.
I'm gonna demo it. I'm gonna take the question that I just asked. I'm gonna go back into the workbook. So we're here. maybe I just go down here to the bottom, and I'm gonna ask it the same thing. And taking Daniel's suggestion,
Please.
please. And I'm gonna send that.
Okay.
So I want you to see the output. So this is what we get. Now it's saying that it can potentially insert 20 different rows starting at number 46. So I'm going to say apply. And we wait.
Yeah. And because you format it as a table, it's doing that alternate line, coloration and stuff like that, which is good.
Now I'm just going to pause for a second. Hopefully, we don't have to play Jeopardy music when we go and cut this video later on, or cut that comment out and then play the Jeopardy music. And it says it made the changes. So this is one of the situations where I think Biz Chat is really limited in Excel versus like if I were outside of Excel. Now I'm going to undo the changes. We're going to go back to the default. The other reason that I like doing this is because now I'm having a conversation, and I'm using this conversation to upskill. I'm using this to learn something new. I'm not working with my data. I could actually pull this into a new Excel file and use that as like my practice, my scratch pad. And then I could take the lessons that I learned back actually to my production data, and I don't have to worry about corrupting my production data. But also by going through Biz Chat here, I am having a conversation with it where it can provide me explanations in detail. It can allow me to like ask follow-up questions in detail. It'll allow me to cross-reference or provide a detailed explanation for something specific. It can output examples based off of my data, give me explanations that go along and match that, potential use cases for that. And then I can actually take the learnings from this and then go back into the workbook, and I can use it from there. So to John's point earlier, I'm not a power user in Excel. It's probably the app that I use the least from the Microsoft apps and services outside of Sway. But with that, this is how I learned to do some complex things in a workbook. And this is like, for me, this is better than searching for a formula and trying to figure out like the syntax and how that applies to my workbook. Now I've given it a sample. It's going to show me what that would actually look like. And then I can take that information, like if I want, head back into the workbook, and then we'll just insert a column into it. It's going to think about it for a minute. It was just a simple insert. Copilot works faster than this to insert a column.
Taking Christmas break.
I'll paste
early.
that in a minute when it thinks that it's like ready for me to do it, and then see like what the output of the formula is.
So it feels to me like the Biz Chat, because you're not making changes to the spreadsheet, it almost like kind of adopts more of like a tutor type of a persona, if you will. Like you didn't tell it to do that, but it's almost like it's more teaching you. It feels like inside of Excel, Copilot is more about getting it done, right? It's more about orchestrating and actually making the change and moving on, right? I guess you could kind of, with prompt engineering, you could say like, I really want to understand this. I want you to explain it to me, stuff like that. But I don't know. It's almost like it infers that a little bit more in Biz Chat because it's more conversational than the one in, I guess maybe one way to phrase is like it's more conversational in Biz Chat. Excel Copilot, like embedded, feels more transactional. Like let's go, let's get it done.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe that's me just anthropomorphizing it.
There's a few more advanced examples we're going to talk about a little bit later, so stick around because I know a couple of our colleagues had some questions around like VLOOKUP and XLOOKUP. We got a section on that coming up, and Biz Chat's like where I would actually recommend the tutorial, the tutor for that. But we've got that coming up a little bit later on in the show.
Okay. You want to look at visualizing data, because that's another thing that's like pretty common. And we've seen, in the very basic stuff that we could do. I'm going to steal a screen. That we could like visualize data that's like all number based and everything. One thing I wanted to try is doing it with like survey data. So I've got a fake survey that we did. If I open this up, I've got survey results. And this is where I asked Copilot to generate, what is it, like 250, I think. Yeah. Yeah, 250 pieces of survey, like feedback and stuff. And it's got like a rating on it. So in Copilot, I want to analyze the data. I could look for like insights and stuff like that. But instead, I'm just going to say visualize this for me. Visualize this for me. Please. I'll say please too. And we'll see what it comes back with. Now, a visualization from Excel, one thing that I like about, like, along the theme of not messing up your spreadsheet, is that whenever you're inserting a pivot table, when you're inserting like a chart, something like that, it wants to do it as a new sheet, which is really cool. So like once this finishes up, it's like, hey, I made a pivot chart. Here's like your average is 3.45 for city center. For downtown, it's 3.38. I could say like, okay, I want to keep that visualization. It's told me something, but I don't want to like just have it stuck in chat. So I click insert as a new sheet, and it got to that visualization rather than just like a big bar chart that has like 250 bars of what the rating was. It, combines it by location and gives me the average, so I can kind of see like, all right, we've got some work to do over here in like the West Side store. Like that has a lower satisfaction rating than like Uptown. Like, okay, what is Uptown doing that West Side can learn from, and stuff like that. So that's kind of helpful to, this would have taken me a few steps to get to this before I would have been like, okay, I'm going to select it all and just like insert a chart. And it would have been like not very useful for me. But Copilot is like, well, what is something that is useful? Well, aggregation by location, that could be a useful thing. So again, it kind of helped me along where I didn't know where I wanted to go, but it kind of helped like lead me to a place that's like, oh, okay, now I could really do something with this. And I could actually like look at like what's happening between these two locations, because I kind of got maybe two outliers here. There's not a whole lot of discrepancy, but there's a little bit, So that's kind of a cool way to visualize the data using also one of those pivot charts. And that's one of those things that I mentioned early on. Like we wouldn't, I wouldn't know to do a pivot chart off of that or a pivot table. I would have to like go to YouTube and figure out how to pivot based off of like the rating and the location, or something like that. I could also do like give me a visual that shows rating by barista, right? Like who's doing a great job, who's not, type of a thing. So I'm going to see if it will pivot now based off of John, Michael, Emily, which will be a little bit interesting because like, in a real world situation, John at City Center might not be John at Uptown. Those might be two different Johns, but hey, we're using fake data. So I'm going to insert that as a new table. And now I can see that like Daniel's got like 3.38, everybody's kind of in the middle of the pack. It means our training is doing really, really good because we don't have anybody, doing exceptionally better than or worse than anybody else. So
since you're here in the desktop, can you go back to the main worksheet and then the Copilot panel on the right hand side, scroll all the way back up to the top.
Okay.
So we do want to point out that this is a conversation. So if you scroll down just a little bit, you have your chat history. You can start the conversation over. So let's clear this. We're going to do new chat.
So I click in there and I have to hit new chat. That gives me a complete blank chat.
Now, when it comes back into this, we can have it start to like analyze the workbook or to provide like insights. So you could say like analyze this workbook, like literally you could make that prompt and then it's going to give you an initial analyzation, but the auto suggestions are going to continue to populate over and over. And sometimes when you open this panel here on the right hand side, it will show you analyze this data or understand this data.
Yeah.
So like click on like
understand.
Click on that one.
Okay.
So it's going to give an initial response. All right. So it's saying that here's the average of the rating. Now we're going to let it finish up, but then look at the suggestions underneath that.
Mm-hmm.
And every time you ask it to do this again, it's going to give you more suggestions to
Excluding Bob.
analyze.
So let's say that Bob is like a drunk. So we're gonna just take him out of it because he's dragging down the numbers.
Or he's a perfectionist and he can't get drinks out on
Right.
time.
There's the rating for by name who's not Bob.
Now, in this particular instance, though, because you asked a follow-up question that related to the first one, now the auto suggestions that it's given you are going to be more scoped to that particular conversation versus if we just asked it for an insight and then another insight and then another insight. It's just going to kind of work its way through all the data and just start returning different types of insights within the workbook. So depending on how you follow it up, it might latch onto the conversation and turn it into a chain of thought conversation, or it might turn it into a series of suggestions. But it's a conversation, so you have the ability to start over, to revisit it, to pivot, to cross-reference. It's really going to be up to you, the adventure that you go on here.
And I kind of wish that the history was like up here somewhere, like maybe under this caret, because maybe I want to go back to the conversation I had earlier. I'd have to scroll all the way up, then scroll past the suggestions, but there's your chat history. So scroll to the top, look for chat history, and then we'll see like, okay, here's the one I did earlier today. Visualize this data, and it reloads that conversation for me.
Yep.
So, yeah, it's a little bit, it could maybe have a little bit better placement in my opinion, but hey, it's there. And I don't think it was there a couple months ago.
No.
So,
no, that's part of the Biz Chat update to Copilot in Excel.
Oh, is that like where it brought in grounding potentially? Okay. Okay, so that's visualizing some data. Was there anything else that you wanted to kind of cover on that? We had like conditional formatting stuff, but
yeah,
I've got that down a little bit further with like charts and colors.
Yeah, we'll push push that one there. We did a couple of examples of the visualizing data. All right, so let's move into some tips and tricks.
Okay. So you showed that first one, which is the getting back to your chat history, and again, clicking new chat. Do we have that in the web version?
Yes.
Let me show your screen. Okay, that's in the web too.
Yeah, so I go back into the web and there's a chat history.
And it's also important to note that this is your chat history for Copilot in Excel. It's not your chat history for Biz Chat, like the whole thing, right? Because if you went to his Biz Chat, you'd see other chat history. So it might be a little bit confusing. Like you've got multiple histories here, one is an in-app experience, one is a cross-app or a Biz Chat experience.
Yeah, so we have the same features in the web, same insights. It's going to give us the visualizations as well. But yeah, we do have that that ability to work with the chat history that is scoped to, in this case, Excel, revisit existing conversations, delete conversations. But keep in mind, these are subject to your, I think, Teams chat retention histories. My organization, we have a chat history that's there. So things in here don't live beyond a certain time period, whether that, it's 15 days, 30 days, 180 days. So to know there might be a retention history there, and then you can delete it. All right, as far as some additional tips and tricks, we kind of covered this just a little bit, but if I'm looking back through this right-hand sidebar, I asked it first to summarize using pivot tables or pivot charts. So it started analyzing the data. It's basically saying that it's created a summary using the pivot table. It hasn't added that to the workbook, but then I'm asking it a follow-up. And that's where the conversation element of this comes into play. and we just alluded to this a moment ago when John was doing the previous demo, because he used one of the auto suggestions at the bottom that was related to a previous question. Copilot started narrowing down its focus to that particular initial ask and then the subsequent ask. It wasn't showing a series of different visualizations. It was based off of the one that was actually there. That's where kind of multi-turn, asking why, asking follow-up questions actually becomes important. As you continue through that conversation, you can ask for things like explanations. So if you're not clear on something, you can ask it to explain it. But, oh, hey, look, it is working.
Oh, hey.
It didn't show up a minute ago. I refreshed the workbook off screen a little while ago. So it is working. I can resize it. Pro tip.
That's weird.
But yeah, so you can ask it for an explanation
Mhm.
of something in the app. But keep in mind, like if you want like a detailed explanation of like what would this mean, and within a visualization, are there better ways to view that, different graphics, different charts, and so forth. BizChat's actually really good at that, especially if you've already fed it some sample data. So suggest the best way to visualize this and explain why. And so I'm not working like in that sidebar. Now I'm gonna get like a more thorough explanation.
Mhm.
And this is the way that I work with Excel. This might not be the way you work with it. You might do some of this in the actual app. We're just showing you some tips and tricks that you might want to consider. So in this case, gives me a great like explanation. It's giving me some Python essentially to go back and review. But now that I have like the explanation, um, I can reference that and then maybe go back and continue my conversation over here. So
Mhm.
that's the kind of the why and the how. As it provides like different analysis. So like within the workbook, maybe I'm going to ask it like uh, a question. Is there a correlation with the reorder? So like if we go and look at this, in this particular one, I have like a quantity in reorder time, and a reorder level. So I'm gonna say like the reorder level and the daily amount sold or used, and it should be able to go and look at that table and answer that question for me. I would say that there is the reorder level, and if I am calculating out the amount of these items that I'm selling daily, then I'm going to have an idea of when I might actually have to reorder, and I can
Mhm.
also factor that into the reorder time that it takes to process, and I can get a pretty good idea of when I might need to do this for like my inventory, and then be able to more accurately forecast my inventory at Jolly Roger Java for like the upcoming orders that I have. So now I'm getting
Mhm.
here an explanation around that, and it's explaining a little bit more about the why and the how. Now I don't have to take the results verbatim. I can say like maybe um, provide a resource or link I can use to learn more. And so I'm just going to ask it, can you give me an external resource to this? And we're going to show that in this case, it's saying that I should go and take a look at this article, this support article from Microsoft. And this is actually a function, so I can verify that it is not hallucinating. There's the syntax, there's the remarks, there's a couple of examples of it. So I can learn a little bit more about that before I actually start to apply it. And that's just another really great use case for the why and the how.
Mhm. Nice. Do you want to move on to working with text a little bit more and kind of
Okay.
seeing Excel reason over text?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to grab the screen back then and I'm going to play with the survey data. So we're going to go back to our like user survey. There's, 250 customers across, I don't know, it was like 6 or 8 locations. Now, I could ask Copilot rather than like based on the ratings, we kind of did like a hard number scale. Instead, I'd be like, give me some pull quotes, right? So summarize this feedback and give me 3 quotes I can use for marketing, right? So like I want to pull some interesting quotes from people as like a testimonial, right? So there's some feedback from people that say like amazing service, delicious coffee, highly recommended. The negative feedback talks about terrible service and cold coffee. You know, so like you can look at like, okay, well, you know, how many people said the coffee was cold? People said the coffee was cold. And now we're not working with like the numbers over here. It's like understanding the sentiment of the text that's in there. Okay, so 13 people said that there was the word cold coffee in there. Okay, so are there any patterns with the cold coffee as far as barista, date, or location? So I'm trying to understand like, okay, where's this coming from, right? So like the feedback mentioned cold coffee. There's a pattern with the east side location and suburb. You know, please see above for details. And like I could insert that as a new sheet again. And now it's done this this pivot table on here where I can kind of see that like in, you know, July and August there was Daniel had a couple of feedbacks that mentioned cold coffee, you know, stuff like that. So you can kind of see, you know, I wouldn't necessarily see the patterns out of here, but you can see like east side and suburb are kind of mentioned a lot. You'd have to kind of surmise that, or Copilot just told me that like, hey, you might look at like the east side and the suburb locations because like they're mentioned frequently, you know, so there might be like problem with the equipment or something like that. Now another thing that we could do is we could maybe like kind of force it a little bit more by just deleting the rating column, right? Like just off of column E, because like the number rating doesn't exist. Give me a pie chart of negative versus positive feedback based on what people said in their survey, right? It's a little short prompt, kind of adding like, I want you to like try to understand and determine if something is positive or negative. You know, maybe have no. So okay, I'm unable to do that. However, I can manually create it by categorizing it. Okay. Okay. Let's categorize them, please. We'll see if it adds a new column for like negative, positive, and then probably you could do a chart off of that because you've got like a value of like A and B. To categorize the feedback, we could do that with a new column, sentiment. Like let's copy that. Let's do sentiment. Then let's paste that in. Oh, there we go. Cool. So see, now I've got positive, negative, positive, negative. Although best coffee shop in town, that's not really negative. So I think my formula, you know, it hallucinated on me. So it's looking for like if it says like highly recommend or if it's like using the word like amazing or something like that. So that had the word amazing in it, but this one had the word best in it. So like it didn't really do what I, you know, wanted it to. It just kind of gave me an example of that.
So
So
copy
let
and
me
paste a
undo
couple of
these.
those results back into the chat window and have it review the formula.
Oh, wait. To go forward a little bit. Okay.
Yeah. So, yep.
Okay. So I'm going to grab these. I'm going to copy that. Look at this data and tell me if the text looks like it matches the sentiment. And hopefully it will be smart enough to tell me that like, no, that doesn't match. That was kind of just like a big blob.
You'd be surprised how well Copilot can actually determine that a big blob is in fact rows and columns of data.
Best coffee shop in town should be positive instead of negative. Love the ambience. Should be positive instead of negative. So like There's a couple of them.
So now
That
ask
it-
it a follow-up,
it's
review the formula and determine if it's correct, or update the formula.
from earlier that we used to understand, or that we used to categorize the sentiment and make adjustments to make it more accurate, maybe. Okay, so it's looking back up in the chat and seeing that like we had the word amazing and highly recommend. So it's like it checks for some keywords. Well, we can add more positive and negative keywords. So it's still just kind of like brute forcing, like
Yeah.
common words that people would use. But it did give me like the word best, the word loved, things like that. Terrible, cold, negative, neutral, stuff like that. So yeah, it gave me a little bit better of a formula, and then that way I can copy and paste that. Now you can see that it's changed. Like that's positive now. This is like neutral. Like it was fine. And it added a third category of like positive, negative, and neutral as well. So that's kind of interesting, and that's like the going back and forth with Copilot to kind of understand things. Now another thing I could do is do like conditional formatting with this stuff. So like let's do conditional formatting on column E, where you mark the negative feedback red and the positive feedback green for the background of the cell, right? Like I don't want like red and green text. I want like the whole thing because it'll be a block, hopefully. Be easier to like skim it. Okay, looking at this, there are two conditional formatting rules that I could apply. Okay, let's do it and see what it does. Done. I've made the changes. So it didn't really do it. So that wasn't very helpful. I guess maybe I could do it on this one. Say like sentiment format the sentiment column by coloring it according to its category, right? See if it does that a little bit smarter. There we go. Well, that did it because it had like actual text that you can see. It's got that's a big long formula now, but it's doing the conditional formatting based off of like that word positive, negative, and then it's leaving neutral alone. So
now I'm surprised that there's not a follow-up in the chat on this yet, but the number one question that I get around analyzing text is, can you create a word cloud using Copilot in Excel?
mm-hmm.
I know the answer. I want you to actually prompt it.
So what was that now?
Can you create a word cloud?
Okay. Can you
based off
give
of the
me
feedback
a
text
word
column?
cloud based on the feedback text? I did word cloud all one word, but you shouldn't have to spell it correctly. Let's see. I don't know. I've never tried to do a word cloud inside of Excel. I always just like rely on Microsoft Forms, to visualize that.
Right.
I'm currently unable to do a word cloud directly. However, you could create one using feedback using the following steps. So copy the text, paste the text into a word cloud generator, customize the word cloud, generate it. Thanks, Excel. Like, so for those with like corporate, security hats on, I don't love this because it's like, yeah, just take like your customer survey data and paste it into some website that you don't have control over. Like that's bad. Excel, don't do that.
Yeah, this is the number one question that I get. I wanted to make sure we got an answer to that. Currently, it can't create a word cloud. There's not a word cloud visualization. Now, through some creative prompting, you might be able to have it add in an additional column where it looks at the the main topic, and it determines the word for that main topic, and then you create a column based off of that, and then maybe you just concatenate it all together, or
I'm
run a count
curious.
off of that.
Okay, so that's the right account. Let's do Copilot. Can I do that though with oh gosh, I'm wrong place. I gotta sign in first. Can I do that with Biz Chat though? Let's see here. Take this feedback table and give me a word cloud from it. We'll see what it does. Again, it's a giant block of text. Okay, it's using designer. There's no way this is going to work. I bet it's going to be gibberish. Okay. I mean, it did like not Basti Suckfee. Bad coif. So not exactly you know,
Right.
it's not great at doing that with word art, but that would have been pretty dang cool. I wonder though, okay, we're getting way off of base. But I was wondering, like, what if you put it into the loop and then had loop make a mermaid diagram off of it? That would be another way you could maybe do it. So I might play with that if you've got another demo that you you want to show.
Well, I think we're going to stick with you for another minute or so,
Okay.
because the next one we need to take a look at is extracting labels from a text column into a new column. Now, we kind of
Okay.
did a version of that just a few minutes ago, but we're going to do a more in-depth version of it here. So while you're
Okay.
still driving, let's take a look
Yeah.
at extracting some information from the table itself.
All right. Let's start a new chat just to kind of get it nice and fresh here. All right. So now we're getting into like X lookup type of data. So like, what do we want to look for then?
No, not X
Or
lookup yet. Nope.
oh, okay.
Yeah, we still want it to like extract something. So like, for example, if we had let's say we had a field that we had concatenated results back from a couple of different fields, like a multi-choice column in SharePoint, and we've exported that down to Excel. It's going to group everything, or it's going to concatenate, and it's going to put like a semicolon as a separator inside of there. But sometimes we do like a concatenated formula, and we're bringing back things and it's in brackets. So there's a way that we can actually use Copilot and have it extract information between certain types of characters inside of the workbook. I thought we had some things with brackets in here, like multi-choice selections, but we don't. So maybe we say like for the location field. So let's add a column that extracts the text from the location field where east or west is referenced.
Okay. So in my new column C, give me an indicator if the word east, and you probably want to put that in quotes, or west is in the location name for each row. It's like just kind of in, natural language.
For reach row.
Oh, for reach row. Row.
We're gonna see if that makes a difference in Copilot's output.
No, doesn't look like it. So if I insert that column, okay, so it didn't, like, I told it in a new column, so I kind of like worded that wrong. So I'll just get rid of that other column. But now you can see that like the word is it has the word in it. So, and it's doing that. It's basically the same way as like the positive negative. It's doing it as like an if or basically.
So that can be used in a couple of different ways. Go back to the formula for this one.
Okay.
Yeah.
right here.
So we got the if statement there, and then we got the prompt that we used against that. So just
Mm-hmm.
rather than trying to figure out that if statement, if with a nested or, with a nested is number, um, with a nested search, and then there's like 5 different sets of opening and closing parentheses. There's 3 different or 4 different sets of strings that have to be enclosed in double quotes, and there's at
Mm-hmm.
least 5 commas inside of there. So instead of trying to figure that out, we just asked it if it can go and look in that column and create a new column with an indicator if the word east or west is present. It created the formula for us. So this is where Copilot's really going to democratize the ability
Mm-hmm.
of the average user to get more value out of Excel, because they know how to ask that question, but they don't exactly
Mm-hmm.
know what that syntax is. They
Yeah.
don't know maybe to put things in double quotes. They don't know how many closing parentheses that they're going to need inside of there. They don't know what the syntax is, and it gets more complicated when you start nesting formulas in other formulas. So
Mm-hmm.
we've taken something now super difficult and made that basically a one sentence ask in Copilot.
I love the little like flag that says show explanation right here. That's like, okay, what the heck is this mean? And it's like, well, it's going to determine like based off the word if it's a yes or a no. It's going to use a search function to find the position of the substring in the location column. It's going to check to see if it's a number, indicating that east was found. So basically, it's doing like a 1 or a 0, probably. It repeats that, and then it's going to basically assign it yes or no based off of like whether or not a number exists for like is it null or is it not null. So that seems like an over engineered solution to me personally.
So ask it a follow up then. Is there a simpler formula
Yeah,
to do the same thing?
seems way overkill to me. Is there a simpler way to do that? It seems like overkill. See what it says. So it's giving me more suggestions off of what to do. Here's one formula that we could use. Identifies the location, contains the word. I mean, that's doing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of stuck on that. Give me 3 more formulas that could accomplish the same thing. Let's see if it can like get creative enough to come up with other formulas. Okay, so HIJ, what the heck? It's like adding more columns. So checks the location, marks yes or no. So that's doing the like if or is number.
It's
Checks the
using a find
location.
function as well.
Say what?
It's if or is number and then find.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a search.
Yeah. So it shows a different
Yeah.
way to like look for the text in the But it's still pretty, stuck on like, yeah, this is and I guess if you hit that, now it added all 3 different ways of doing it. And you can see the results are the exact same for each one. So that's interesting.
So ask it one follow up. Ask it if
Okay.
there is an if statement that can reference the first function.
To like go back up to the top of the chat.
Or I think it was a previous chat that we were having.
Yes, you could reference the results of the first function with another if by doing like the if indicator. If it's yes, then it has east or west. Otherwise, it's another.
So it's referencing like a
Like
column
way up
that's
earlier.
already there. So
Yeah.
what we're trying to get is that ask it one more time. Is there an if statement that could reference like the first 4 characters of the string.
Of the location value. I did 2 question marks, so it's going to be like, whoa, this guy's getting heated with me. Yes, you could use the left function. So you could start at the end and then you could go over like an array of characters. Yeah. So yeah, you could do that, and then there would be an if left, then it's east or west or other.
And in that case, like using the left function, it's actually looking to essentially extract information that's inside of there. And then a variation of
Yeah.
that would be to find information between certain types of characters. Find info, look between these 2 brackets, look between these 2 double quotes. So there's ways that we can use natural language to create some formulas that are extracting things like labels and other metadata that we might define in our data and extract that. Like you might have a field where you've listed uh, the state, the county, and the city, and some additional information in that single field. So you could say like extract the city or extract labels from this type of bracket and put that in like a new column, and it'll create a formula to actually do that, where you don't have to figure out, okay, I'm going to have to use the equals, text before, bracket, text after, and then at mention the specific column, and then comma, here's the first character, comma, here's the second character, and now make sure I've got the closing brackets correct, and make sure that I've also got all of the commas and syntax inside of here correct. We can just say, can you create a formula to extract these values and then add that to the workbook?
Yeah.
All right, let's move on.
Yeah, my brain's like starting to break on some of these things.
Why don't we switch over to mine? I'll drive this next
Okay.
one. And I know we had a request
Yeah.
for this specific. We mentioned this earlier, and this was like one of
Okay.
the first things that I wanted to experiment with, working with Excel and Copilot. So I'm actually going to go clear out my my chat history, and then we'll start a new one. And what I want to work with is I've got some like fields that are inside of here that identify categories and specific items. So the items could be like a unique identifier. And then my workbook contains both quantity information and reorder information. But I've also got a separate sheet in there that just has reorder information. And so what if I needed to pull some data from sheet number 1 while I'm over here in like sheet number 2? And that's where you're going to start to get into formulas such as here, let me just open up more functions. VLOOKUP, and then also you're going to get XLOOKUP. So this is like one of the first things that I explored when I started working with Copilot almost 15 months ago, was trying to like understand like the difference between these two, because I think at the time XLOOKUP had just come out and I saw a bunch of like posts all over social media around it, and it's the updated function, and I really wanted to know like what that meant. So the first thing that I actually did before I started working with it is I went and I told Copilot to explain the difference. We'll get there. Between VLOOKUP and XLOOKUP, and then use this table for examples. And so just go and grab some of my sample data. feed that into it. And now before I even go in and start working with it, I've given it a sample of what my data looks like, and it should give me some specific results that are in use case for each of those. So now we get the explanation, we get the syntax, and it's also given us a specific example
Mhm.
that automatically applies to our data. So like just going back up, it's going to tell us a VLOOKUP is going to search for values in the first column of the table and then return the same row from the specified table. So this is what the syntax is going to look like. And I have no idea what that actually means. So I know this is the lookup value. This is the
Yeah.
table that you should be pulling from. This is maybe the column that you want to reference, the range and the lookup. That doesn't really mean a whole lot to me, but the example makes more sense now. So you're going to look at the column where espresso beans might be available, and then in the table from A2 to J3, we're looking for 6, and we're going to see if that if it is available, then we're going to return as false. So now I can actually maybe go back to the workbook and then paste it in, see if like we can get a response based off of it. But the thing is, it's going to be using my data in order to do that. And then it goes in and breaks down the X lookup, and it's saying that this one's newer. It doesn't say it's newer. I know it's newer. It's more flexible, powerful. It can search both vertically and horizontally, and it doesn't require the lookup column to be in the first column. So like we can grab that one, drop it in, and you see like I'm actually getting a direct result based off of that X lookup, like almost
Mhm.
immediately. And then it gives you an explanation here for like the key differences. Talks about flexibility, error handling, and then multiple criteria. So now that I've kind of got it thinking about some of my data, I could give it some other maybe examples that could help me to better leverage it or use it. And this is where I really like kind of going split screen or like kind of just bouncing back and forth between the tabs. So in this case, like I've already given it a sample of my primary data, but like let's say that I had a table where it was just we say all right, so that's the initial data that I
Mhm.
want. All right, so I'm going to go back and I'm going to do something very similar to like what we did up here. Explain the difference between the VLOOKUP and the XLOOKUP. I'm going to grab that. Come on. Uh, you're not going to let me copy? There we go. All right. Just going to do a new conversation. And I'm going to clean out this information. And I'm going to say these tables. So we'll take this from our first table. And then I'll say, and I'm going to go to my second table over here. Just grab some data, drop that in. And what I wanted to do is to see, is it going to be able to give me some examples, but in this case, across two different tables?
Mhm.
And so I can have that conversation. So is it possible to go from one sheet and do a VLOOKUP and an XLOOKUP over to like another sheet? And the Excel gurus out there are going to be like, yeah, but some of us are new to like that particular formula, and so that might be one where we need a little bit of help. I just want to say like verify this works across sheets in a workbook. Yes, and they can work across different sheets in the workbook. And now that I've asked it that question, um, and um, it gives me an example to try. So for this one, find the reorder level of decaf beans from a sheet that's actually named reorder.
Mhm.
So I should be able to paste this into my first workbook here. So we'll go to sheet number 1. I have sheet number 2, which is reorder. And let's just say we go over here, paste that in, and says that the reorder level for decaf beans should be 20 pounds. So let's actually go back and try to verify that. Decaf beans, reorder level, 20 pounds. So it actually went and found like cross sheets. And so now in this case, BizChat's really being my Excel guru and stepping me through how to do the thing that I need to do that's pretty complicated.
Yeah, I would need a tutorial for that. This is why I've never
great.
looked at those before.
Can you create a tutorial on this topic?
Oh yeah.
Maybe,
yeah, rather than hunting down a video or something, just have it like make one.
So create an outline with practical examples, quizzes, and explanations. And so now I've got a virtual tutor. And so one of my favorite things to do, I feel like I say that quite a lot with Copilot. But so one of my favorite things to do is like, I've got the outline. It's got what I asked for, practical examples, quizzes, and explanations. So create the, let's say we'll create the intro section, and I'm going to be nice to it and say, please. And so now it's going to walk through, create that initial session, and it's like in real time. I'm starting to step through the actual lesson.
Yeah, like what is it? So when would I use it? And why should I know both of them? Why not just like have one take over the other?
And then, I mean, I can continue and I can go to the next session, or I can use its example or its sample. Let's go ahead and add some examples to this, explain common use cases for both functions. I kind of like that one, so I'm going to add that to my lesson plan. But it's interactive because I can follow up with it. Now, we're talking about Copilot in Excel, and I'm doing a lot over here with Biz Chat, but this is like how I've learned many of these tools and like how to actually apply them is to go and like walk through this stuff in Biz Chat, and then take those lessons back here, and then use the scoped version of the chat on this side or in the workbook to actually apply some of those lessons and to kind of simplify some of what I'm trying to do with the workbook.
Wow. That's pretty cool. Okay.
And that works for a lot of things, not just like X lookup, V lookup. You can use it for like all the different kinds of formulas, explaining syntax, like turn you into a syntax master. You can ask it to challenge your knowledge. You can even ask Copilot to create an Excel content creator course and take you from being a total noob in Excel to a pro user in Excel in 60 days. And you can have it like create that interactive lesson plan for you with explanations, with details, with sample data, and then give you real-time feedback around the inputs or around like the results of the interaction. And you can like save your progress and go to a new conversation and pick up for the next lesson. And so you can be your own like training course on this.
That's awesome. So
all right, let's keep stepping forward.
You want to do, we've done a lot of like the conditional formatting stuff. I'll show real quick, then maybe we jump to Python. Is another thing that I found that's really helpful with the right click menu is that we showed like suggesting formulas, but also suggesting conditional formatting. And it's like, okay, I've got this data here. It's like 85 lines and it's all revenue. Maybe I don't know how I want to color this or how I want to format it. So by right clicking and doing suggest conditional formatting, it's given me like 5 or 6 different ideas really. And it's in like plain language, right? Highlight the cells where the item starts with Buccaneer. Like that doesn't, I don't really care about that. Like, why would I care? Or this other one that's like highlight cells equal to east side in the location. Kind of still don't care about that. But these other ones are pretty good. Like highlight the cells where like it's less than $33,000 in revenue, or highlight the top 10%, right? So let's do that one. Highlight the top 10% of revenue items, and this will tell me like what are the best drinks, the best performing drinks. So it's going to do a top 10%. It's going to make it yellow. Why not? Okay. So it's gone through and it's picked the best ones in the top 10%. And then you can kind of see like the Jolly Roger latte, the Jolly Roger latte again, the Captain's cappuccino, stuff like that. So you can highlight like what's our top 10% performing items. And then you could also like filter by color, like only give me these top. And then now I'm looking at it specifically in there, and I can see like some common threads here, like the Blackbeard's brew across different locations. It's popular, and same with like the latte that's across 4 different locations, right? So maybe we want to do like a special based off of that or something. So that's kind of an interesting way to work with your data and not only color it, but kind of like use it to filter down rather than like the traditional way of filtering, like, greater than this, or you could do like top 10 or something. And I could do like top 10 items, top 10%, same thing. But, it's a little bit easier to like, if you don't know where that is, it's a little bit easier to just do it with natural language if you want to. I'm going to clear, there we go, clear that filter. So, because you can see I get lost in like the filtering sometimes, but I could just ask it over here in Copilot to tell me at like an executive level, something like that. All right, you want to play with Python a little bit?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's
I ran out of water. My throat is killing me. So to tee this up, I'm going to close out some of these other spreadsheets. And I'm going to pull up a real ugly one. So we're going to go back into Excel, and doing advanced analysis with Python, I think kind of deserves like a big data set, right? So let's go here, like product sales export. And this is one I got from a friend at Microsoft. And this is like 7,500 items on here of like segments and countries and what products. It's basically a sales report again, like what we were doing with the coffee shop, but it's a lot more complex now. And so we're going to open up Copilot. And then now this is only in the Windows version, and you need to have like the current channel. It's still rolling across the others, like, monthly enterprise and semi-annual come down the road, stuff like that. But if you're current channel, this is generally available. So you need to get to that channel, and you'll know you have it if you see this suggested prompt, advanced analysis. So it's saying it wants to get deeper analysis using Python. That means you've got that Wave 2 Python feature. So we're going to click on that. And essentially what it does is it goes into like a state, right? It's almost like I'm putting Excel into a Python trance, right? I'm going to go into advanced analysis mode. And what it does is it creates a sheet called analysis. And then it's going to start, it's almost going on autopilot, but it does guide you through the way. But it's going to look at like different vectors of the data and be like, I could do this type of visualization, or here's another type of insight. And it's kind of like working with the data from different angles to see what it can do for me. So like in here, like I'm going to run some data into here to show some analysis. You can always hit show Python code, and you could like get that code, and steal it for another script or something. So it got some of that data and it added it to the new sheet. It's like, in order to perform deeper analysis, here's what we want to do, right? We can do a sales analysis, a profit analysis. Here's the different things I can do, but you're still in control, right? This is still Copilot, not autopilot. So it's like, well, Do I want to analyze the sales performance over segment? Do I want to evaluate the profitability? So like I think I care more about profitability. So let's click that last one. And it's like, okay, it kind of hit a fork in the road. And it's like, where do you want to go? So now I pointed it toward the profitability section, and now it's writing more Python code. So you can see it's doing a whole bunch of things now to give me it's more of like an end-to-end kind of analysis here. So, and it's still going. Okay, it finally stopped. And you can see here that the total profit from each segment. So if I kind of like make this a little bit bigger here, like the channel partners, the enterprise, that was negative. Yeah, so it's kind of showing that. So like let's visualize this, because I want to see like those positive and negatives. You can see like it's grouping the data right now, but I want to visualize that data, and I'm going to zoom in on this a little bit. So right here, channel partners, they were a little bit okay. Enterprise, that's below 0. So like there's a problem there. Mid-market, but like, oh my gosh, government is crazy. So like you can see, some of that data analysis where just like the raw numbers, like you would see that was negative, but you don't really see like the scale until you kind of say, hey, what else can I do? Where else can I go with this? So I can do also, when it runs into like a roadblock or something, you can just ask like, what else can I do? I'm gonna say like, let's forecast the next 3 years. See what that does, because I've tried that before where it'll do like a median, and then it'll do like standard deviations on both sides of like, what if it's really good or really bad. Okay, now it doesn't want to do that. Assess the impact of sales and discounts. So here we go. Like, what if I had a discount on something? What if I ran a sell or something like that? So it put the discounts into bands basically, and was like, here's the impact. And I may not understand what that looks like or what that's telling me right here, but it's telling me in natural language that like the chart shows the total sales and profit for each band, allowing for easy comparison. So like, explain this to me like I'm 10 years old. What am I looking at here? Right? Because I kind of don't really know what it's telling me, because I'm not very good at this and I feel like I'm getting a fever. Okay, so sure. Imagine you have a lemonade stand and sometimes you give discounts to your customer. This chart shows you how giving discounts affects the amount of money you get from selling lemonade. So like it's kind of put it into simpler terms. The blue bar shows how much money you made from selling lemonade for each type of discount. The red bar shows how much money you kept after paying for the materials, the cost of goods sold. So that's pretty cool. Like this way you can decide if giving discounts is a good idea for your lemonade stand. So it's kind of like explaining like, what is that? What's the purpose of that chart? So I think that's pretty interesting, but it's pretty cool to just keep saying like, suggest more ideas, and just let it fill up this analysis form or this analysis sheet, and keep adding things to it. I see we've got a couple comments over here. If there's anything.
Those were me.
Oh, okay, cool. Okay, so
I've been sharing.
Andy's putting some links in.
So I gave a couple of links for some specific training materials around some of what we're talking about, and then I did a couple of different replies in the window. It's not specific to Python what you're doing, but I just want to make sure we get those out there. Some formulas for different categories that we've talked about, some sample formulas. So those are on my LinkedIn. But just threw those out there for everybody.
Do you want me to show the pedestrian stuff we were talking about?
Yeah,
I was
that was
geeking
really
out
cool
about that hard. Okay, this is something that may work well, it may not work well, but if you want to play with this stuff, there is a website. It is called Craggle.com. Oh, wait, no. Craggle. Let me just see what it is. Oh, Kaggle. Sorry, Kaggle. Craggle, that's the crazy glue from the Lego movie. Kaggle.com, Kaggle.com. This gives you data sets. So you can like get giant, hairy data sets and play with Python and see what it can do. Like, give me all air traffic landing statistics, and it's like this giant file from 2 days ago from this guy. So what I did was I looked at, put ourselves in the idea of, in the mindset of a coffee shop, right? What if I had sensors all over a city with like pedestrian data at different intersections so that we were counting people across the city? What if like, some sensor company was doing that and I bought that data set and I could use that data set to help me plan where to put my next store locations? So I have done that from Kaggle.com. I went out and I got this data set called pedestrian counts. And it's like this giant fake, pedestrian count thing with 724,000 records. So basically it's like every street corner across an area, and it's hourly data. Every hour it counted the people, and it did that for an entire year, January through the end of December. And then again, we can go into Copilot and we can say, get advanced analysis, and then it's going to start a new sheet. I already did this once with analysis one. So if this doesn't work, I'll kind of show you what we kind of played with earlier this week. So it's doing an analysis sheet, and it's going to understand, 700,000 pieces of data, and start writing Python to help me plan out, where should I put my stores? Maybe I want to understand like the foot traffic of different locations based on the hours, right? Because I've got every hour of the day. So like, let's combine that and figure out like, when should I have like high and low staff periods? When should I like, be open or closed? Things like that. Okay, so you can do like identify trends over time, such as monthly or seasonal trends. That's kind of interesting. Like, it could do off of like seasonal because it knows that it's calendar data. Determine if there's any correlations between intersections and external factors. So that would like kind of look out at, is there other external factors? So I could say, I'm planning to open 3 new coffee shops. Take this pedestrian data, traffic data, and tell me where I should open the new shops. Let's see if it understands that. I'm trying to remember what my prompts were last time. At one point, we did a heat map where it's like, hey, show me a heat map of the pedestrian counts based off of the different intersections. So here we're seeing that like based on the pedestrian traffic, here's the top places you might look at: Liffey Street and Halfpenny Bridge, Baggett Street and Messpill. Like, these are just fake names, right? Henry, Coles, Lane, and Duns. So you can see like based off of like those locations, it's aggregated that data up at the top. So show me a heat map of the data by intersection. Let's see if it does that heat map. Otherwise, I'll show you the other analysis page. So it's busy. It says busy, and it's writing Python code. And now it's given me this heat map of all the locations, and it's still building it out. But I can kind of see like some hot spots right here in that data. I can kind of see like there's some like almost patterns right here across these types of things. And you can see like based off of this, it's, what is this? 5,000 people, 10,000 people. If I'm getting over 20,000 people across a specific time period in a location, it's like, this is a hot spot right here in this area. And I can see that that's like that Ashton Quay Fitzgerald's out. It might be like a really good spot to look at. So that's it, making like a heat map based off of the location and the time. Do you remember, Andy, what was some of the ones that I did last time? I'll just kind of show it for brevity's sake. So I did this earlier, like on Monday, And I looked at those. There's that same kind of heat map. Um, and then I had it give me like a bar chart, showing them like in order. That's not that advanced. This was getting interesting is like, so here's the Python image that it created, and you can see the date of the week. That's not listed, right? Like it's just raw like month, day, year. But with that Python code, because it's like an actual like day of the year, it figured out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and showed me that like, my lowest day is Sunday and also Monday. I've got kind of peak times here. So then I got into asking it. Actually, let me see if I can look at my chat history here. So this was on 12/16 that we were kind of playing with this. And I got into advanced analysis. And then I asked it some of these questions about scheduling. So like it pointed out like here's the top 10 places you might look at. You can see that these match like those top 5 that it gave me earlier. Visualize it with a bar chart that was kind of like not super advanced. And then I said like give me the days of the week so I could see like how busy each day is. So you can kind of see that like, that like the middle of the week is more busy. I could also see the hour of the day. So I also asked it for the hour. So now you can see that like it really kind of ticks up at like 8 o'clock. It peaks, around what is that, like 5 o'clock PM, 6 o'clock PM, starts to trail off. So then I started thinking through like, well, what if like I've got 5 staff members and I need you to help me schedule these people based off of this data, right? So I want you to never have less than 2 people on staff, and I want you to have, a minimum of 4 people on staff during peak hours, right? And also make sure every staff member gets a 1-hour break during the day. And you can see as I scroll down, it didn't do it quite right. So I did this like on and off type of thing. And then I asked it to visualize that. So it gave me like when each member is on or off, and it did it very literally. So like John and Andy are working like crazy. These guys don't have any hours. And like why would, Megan be on for an hour, then off, and then take a break and then be back on? It's like it didn't make any sense. I told it like, okay, you didn't do this right. Also like give me the names. And I told it like, redo this. No worker should work more than 8 hours a day, because it had me at like 23 and a half hours straight. So then it redid that and it gave that, but it's still kind of scattered throughout the day. So again, you can look with your human eye and tell it like, no, that doesn't make any sense because, the store should never be empty. And basically it's empty 3 hours of the day. So it's all about prompt engineering, right? So I'm kind of telling it like, hey, the blocks of time need to be contiguous. You shouldn't have any time where it's empty, things like that. And that's kind of where I ran out of time last time where we were playing with it. But this gives you an idea of like, you could then take that data and start saying like, okay, based off this foot traffic, where should I put my people? And you're going to want to do, of course, a sanity check, like any kind of generative AI, a sanity check to look at that, right? And say this isn't right because like it's got an empty store, and kind of like guide Copilot. And it's going to be like anything that we're using with Gen AI right now, where you're going to get better at like how to ask the proper questions, or how to tell it the parameters. Like I didn't tell it that the store should never be empty. I also didn't tell it that everybody needs to work the same hours and not have a bunch of gaps in there. So Copilot didn't know to not do that, so you kind of had to like guide Copilot. And now I'm getting a little bit better result that looks like a little bit more like John and Andy can actually sleep at night, and not work 20 hours a day, that type of thing. So, but yeah, that's my like, looking at Python until my eyes went crossed type of situation. I don't know, Andy, if you've got anything to add to that, but I thought it was a fun example to maybe inspire people to go look at that Kaggle website and see if you can kind of play with fake data when the stakes aren't high. and just see what you can do so that you know what's possible, and then you can actually like impress people. you know so
So that
that's
one was really fun.
that's what I've got.
I'm glad we got to explore that. I'm gonna give your voice a break. I'm gonna
Okay.
take us home. I'm gonna give us a smooth landing here at
Yeah.
the end. I got a few things that we want to end with that you should be thinking about when you're working with Copilot in Excel. And specifically, the topic for this section is called Ask Questions About Excel. We're
Mm.
going to talk a little bit about some of what it can and can't do when you go to ask questions of Copilot while you're working with a document. So just taking a look at our data here, we have this category field. And in the category field, I have categories like coffee beans, dairy and alternatives, sweeteners, flavors, and so forth. What I'd like to try to do is across the category, maybe just get a brief summary and perhaps an average or the sum of the inventory value, and get all of that from Copilot on a category by category basis. So I'm going to try to think about the prompt that I might actually ask here. So I might say summarize the category field and then provide, it's been a long week, a sum of the inventory value on a category by category. It would help if I could spell basis. So let me just make sure I fixed that. All right, so summarize the category, and I'm going to say like maybe the category or categories. Provide a sum of the inventory basis on a category or the inventory value by category basis. All right. So what I'm trying to get it to do is to consolidate within the category, look at the data, give me a sum based off of that, and then give that information back to me. Now,
Mhm.
immediately, it went and started trying to create like a visualization. So I created total inventory value by category. So like, let's add that to a new sheet and like we'll actually look at it. So it created a pivot table, and then it's actually creating a sum for the values inside of there. So you can see category and then sum of total inventory values. So that's one way that it can actually do that. So in that case, it was actually very helpful. But it also gave me another response. Here's a summary of the categories with the sum of the inventory value of each. And it only gave me 2 of the categories, but we can tell from the pivot table that there's actually a lot more. The pivot table is nice. I would be able to maybe display that, dashboard or share a link to the sheet. But what if I want to pull this for like an executive summary? What if I want to reuse this somewhere else? Maybe I'm creating a PowerPoint presentation for our investors, and we have to disclose the inventory value that we typically have within the store at a particular time. Having it here or pulling this pivot table over might not be to my advantage. So let's actually try this another way. And I'm showing this or demoing this to show that there is a limitation even when working with Copilot in Excel and having it do things like create an executive summary.
Mhm.
For example, let's actually tell it. All right, so create an executive summary of the categories and their sum for the total inventory value. Again, I'm asking very similar for what I did a moment ago. It's going to work on the
Mhm.
suggestions, and it's giving me just the same output, and that's not what I want. So this is where I'm going to pivot. I'm actually going to head over into Copilot Biz Chat. And from here, I can say, okay, summarize the categories and provide a sum of the inventory value on a category by category basis for, and then I'm just going to reference that file that I'm working with. So that's my store inventory list. And then I'm gonna have Biz Chat go through that, and wow. And look how fast it's actually doing that. So this is just kind of a what to know when to ask certain questions of Copilot in Excel versus like when to lean on Biz Chat for this. I had a specific example at work the other day where we had this question, and this was the lesson that was learned from it. Biz Chat gave us the answer almost immediately, and it gives you the additional flexibility to ask it follow-up questions, and then even reformat it, repurpose it in a different way. And it does that like super quick and like super easy. So I just wanted to show that that example. So that's one. Now, another example, and we kind of touched base on this just a little bit ago, was like leveraging Copilot to kind of be your tutor or your assistant. And I was thinking about it while you were doing the Python demo, and I remembered another kind of training that I'd done with somebody. When you work with like BizChat, for instance, and you're referencing a file, that file can and Copilot can assume a bunch of different roles. So in this case, just summarize and return the data back to me. But what if I wanted to do something different? What if I wanted Copilot to be, so teach me how to use Copilot in Excel, reference this file for lessons, prompts, and create your training modules. And so I'm just going to reference the file that I got stored. And in this case, it's a PowerPoint. And I did link to this on my LinkedIn for anybody who's interested in this, getting started with Microsoft 365 Copilot and Excel PowerPoint. It's 42 slides. It's great. It's detailed. Definitely check that out. So I'm going to tell it to assume the role of a tutor. And now it's going to go and grab that information. And based off of what I know about that PowerPoint deck, it's creating that training plan. Now, we kind of did an example of this a moment ago, and I was like, well, step me through this, create the training module by module. But I wanted you to see this because I think this is a great tip. Reference content that you already have and turn that into, in this case, a training tool. And Copilot's going to be my trainer, and it's going to answer my questions. But as we did this a little bit ago, I also had the other idea, and we haven't really explored this. So, John, I'm going to go down a rabbit hole for just a minute.
Sure.
Agents are a new feature that we can take advantage of, and an agent gives you a chatbot based experience, and you can scope it to a specific set of documents and a specific role. And agents are going to work with BizChat through work, but you can also surface the agent over in Excel and the Copilot in the sidebar over there. So I can go in here and I can tell, well, I want to create an agent, and I can create an agent just using the describe function. Tell it like what I want it to do. So like, for example, I can like just copy this prompt here and then tell it, well, create an agent, reference that file. Make sure we get Copilot right. And then it's going to start basically creating the agent for me and basically that like chatbot experience. The cool thing about this is I'm using the agent feature, and I can call it with an app mention from a whole bunch of different places. I can reconfigure it. I can point specific data sources to it, and I can.
Well, you're making it so it's useful for other people instead of just you. You know, you can publish it and package it.
So what it's doing right now is I gave it a role and I gave it a document. So it should be going and crawling that document and looking at the content in it. From there, it's building out a set of instructions for the Copilot's responsibilities and what it's going to do. It's creating a set of starter prompts. You see those as kind of blocks from BizChat Home. Those are also the same thing you see whenever you go and you start a new conversation with Copilot up here. Those are like starter prompts to kind of get started with. So it's actually creating that. And if we look at the configuration on the back end, it just says Excel. I'm going to give it a name. Excel Copilot Tutor. There's the description. It's starting to define. There's the set of instructions that it's created. We go down. We can see that if it has a knowledge source or additional knowledge sources, it can be updated.
Yeah.
It doesn't like the name for
Too
this
long.
first one. It says, yeah, it's too long. So like maybe we just say intro because that is
Yeah.
short.
That's weird that it did something that it couldn't do.
And then look, there's the starter prompts for it. So
Mhm.
that's your Excel tutor. And then you can actually test it out. Tell me about XLOOKUP, and it should go and pull that information. Now, depending on the data source that you're pulling from, it might take a little while for it to actually create that bot. So in this case, we've started to create this tutor thing, which is pretty powerful. But
Mhm.
going a little bit deeper in it, if you start off with just a custom, instead of describing, if you go directly to the configuration tab, you can start working with the name and the description. And the description is actually super important because it helps to set the role of the Copilot. So if we go back and we look at the description that it created, it's pretty in depth. An agent that acts as a tutor to teach users how to use Copilot in Excel using the provided lessons, prompts, and training modules. So it actually pulled some of my original prompt and created a description off of that. And then it created a
Mhm.
specific set of instructions for what it could do. Act as a tutor, or to teach users how to use Copilot in Excel. And so we go back and we look here. I can expand this. I get 1,000 characters to work with. I can set the description and start to provide the role for it. Down here, I get 8,000 characters to give it a custom set of instructions to tell it more what to do. So start off with the describe tab, describe it in natural language, look what it outputs for the instructions, and then use that to maybe start creating your own custom set of instructions and capabilities. And there's even some information there to tell you more what to do. From here, you get to generate the knowledge. What's the knowledge base that you want to pull from? And in my case, I browsed and pointed at a specific document. So I just went to the Browse tab. I navigated through SharePoint to find the document that I wanted. And
Mhm.
then that referenced that as one of the 20 sources that I'm going to be able to leverage or take advantage of. But I could go back later, maybe remove that, maybe not use that source in the future. If I have a SharePoint site or a URL, I can point it directly at that. And from what I've recently learned, you should be able to point it at a SharePoint site and consume the content that's there. A
Mhm. I've
document
done like a
library,
doc library. Yeah.
multiple libraries, folders within a library, or even down to specific documents. And
Mhm.
the combination is 20 knowledge sources. So it could be one document and 19 document libraries. It could be
Mhm.
10 document libraries and 10 specific folders in other locations. It could be 20 specific documents if you want. And there's a number of different document types that are supported: docs, PowerPoint presentations, also PDFs, HTML files, supposed to support ASPX files, aka SharePoint pages, Excel files, and more. So you can have
Mhm.
20 sources there, and then you can go down and you can define the starter prompts for it. But once you've built it and you've given it the instructions, you can go back later on and you can tweak it. You can continue to modify it and you can continue to work with it. So I could go ahead and create this, and I'm able to do this because I have a Microsoft 365 Copilot license. I can create that agent, and then doesn't like that one. It might be too close to the one that I created a moment ago. Um, so we'll run this one and see. But you can deploy it, and then we will be able to reference it in Biz Chat, and I should be able to reference it while I'm actually working in Excel and be able to call that knowledge base while I'm in Excel, and then extend that Copilot and Excel's capabilities to reference the agent and the additional features.
Mhm.
I'm just now really learning a lot about agents. They are, I think, going to be super powerful. There's going to be a lot that we're going to be able to do with that. This just takes me into the agent. So there's my Copilot or Excel tutor. It's got my documents. Welcome. We'll start with the lesson and how it can help you. And now I've got my training tutor that I can take advantage of. Now I'm actually going to roll back over here. Maybe let's just refresh the chat history, and should be able to. I might have to refresh it, but you should be able to app mention and
Can you
bring
app
over.
mention inside the app chats? I haven't seen that before.
Yeah, it might not be rolled out in this tenant yet, but you should be able to bring that agent up and make that like part of the in-chat experience over there. But you'll definitely be able to leverage it anywhere Biz Chat's actually being used. And in this case, we're simply taking a source that's specific to the capabilities that I want. In this case, how to use Copilot in Excel, turning that into an agent that gives me a training experience, walks me through lessons and modules based off of that data source. It's interactive so that I can ask questions and I can learn more. I can provide it sample data. It can give me sample outputs. And now I've got a super smart tutor that meets my exact needs.
Nice. Oh, that's awesome. That's we've gone on quite a journey the past 2 hours. different places. We've talked a lot about, like, working specifically in Excel inside the confines of the app, but then also breaking out to like still leverage that Biz Chat to kind of be your like overall, assistant in helping with Excel. I know, I've learned a lot the past little bit, the past week that we've really been playing with Excel and trying it out. Getting ideas like, that pedestrian traffic or something like that. So I hope that this has really kind of at least sparked a few ideas of where, you haven't considered using Excel for something in the past, and now you want to be able to kind of, do a heavier lift than what you were, believed that you had the capability to do before, with Copilot kind of, helping be that like force multiplier, right? So
this one's been fun.
cool.
I think we still got a lot to learn. I'm looking forward to diving into it a little bit more. I'm gonna totally put us on the spot, and big shameless plug. John and I have been selected to deliver a workshop at the upcoming Microsoft 365 Community Conference in Las Vegas. It's going to be at the 1st of March. We're really excited to deliver a full day hands-on workshop.
May, not March.
May. Super deep dive into Copilot. We got a few things that we need to square away knowledge-wise, but we're looking forward to that. And you might see some links pop up here in the near future. If you want to learn more, reach out to one of us. Happy to share that information. But I'm really excited about that opportunity. I know you are as well. And I mean, we got a lot of content that we've already built, but we're looking forward to like really turning into something. Really,
it's a
really
matter
cool.
of like stitching it together into a cohesive story that's a full day, right? Putting that together, and to be fantastic to spend a whole day with you guys in Vegas for those that can make it. So we'll have more information about it as we get closer and closer to it, but you'll start seeing promo videos and things coming out soon. But it's gonna be a lot of fun.
This one's been fun.
2025
for Copilot and the journey that we're going on looks to be really, really exciting. We've been really thankful to have you all along with us on the journey so far. We got some more cool things coming up. Let us know what you want to see in the next one. We're planning our January show now. We got some cool stuff that we want to talk about, but we want to hear what you have to talk about as well. But with that, we want to thank you for being here. We hope you have a happy holiday, and we'll see you in 2025, folks.
Thanks, guys. Happy New Year.